Let's get started with task 1 of the lab, which is to configure OSPF. This is the lab topology implemented on Eve NG. I will configure OSPF area 0 for PE1, PE2, P1 and P2 interfaces connected between these 4 OSPF routers, and I will configure OSPF area 1 between P1 and PE3 on this interface. This is the configuration script I have prepared for OSPF configuration. I will configure loopback 0 address as the router ID. This is for any OSPF router, and I'll set the OSPF process to be process 1. The process ID is 1, and I'll enable OSPF on the needed interfaces with the proper area ID as shown in the lab topology. For PE1, to configure OSPF process, we will add on the system view mode OSPF and the OSPF process ID 1, so OSPF 1, and the router ID. The router ID is the loopback of the router. So the loopback of PE1 is 10.0.1.1. We can double check this. On PE1, we can issue command display IP interface brief, and we can see that loopback 0 has IP address 10.0.1.1/32. So the IP address 10.0.1.1 will be the OSPF router ID for PE1. So inside OSPF process ID 1, I will add area 0, and I will quit from the area view and I will quit from the OSPF view. So we have on PE1 just only one area ID 0. As in the topology, we have PE1 is only in OSPF area 0, and I'll enable OSPF on the needed interfaces. On loopback 0, I will enable the OSPF process ID using command OSPF enable and the process ID 1 and the area ID area 0. This is under the loopback interface. And on the interfaces connected to the other OSPF routers, we have two interfaces, Ethernet 100 and Ethernet 101. Both interfaces are in OSPF area 0 and the process ID is 1. So I'll add command OSPF enable 1 area 0 under each interface of them. To double check that, in the lab topology we will have two interfaces, 101 from PE1, and this interface is connected to 101 on P1, and we have another interface which is Ethernet 100 which is connected to PE2 100, and the two interfaces are in OSPF area 0. Let's copy the script of the OSPF for PE1 now and paste it into the configuration view or in the system view mode of PE1. Right click to paste the copied script. To double check that the OSPF is already configured, we can issue command display current configuration OSPF, and this is the OSPF process ID 1 that it's just added, and we can issue command display OSPF interface. We have three interfaces, Ethernet 100, Ethernet 101 and loopback 0. I'll do almost the same configuration on PE2, but with it changing the router ID, because on PE2 we have different IP address for the loopback interface, which is 10.0.2.2 on PE2. We can double check that on PE2. Display IP interface brief, and we can see that loopback 0 on PE2 has an IP address 10.0.2.2. This is the router ID of the OSPF that will be configured on PE2. And we have area 0, and we have three interfaces to be enabled with OSPF, the loopback 0 interface and Ethernet 100, Ethernet 101, all in area 0. Let's back to the topology to check that. We have on PE2 Ethernet 101 and Ethernet 100, which is correct. This is to be enabled for OSPF area 0 plus the loopback interface of PE2, which is loopback 0 interface. So I'll copy now the configuration of the OSPF for PE2 and paste it in the system view mode. Right click to paste the copied configuration. And let's now switch to another router, which is PE3. It will be configured with OSPF1 router ID and the loopback interface of PE3. And PE3 OSPF process will have just one area, and the area ID is area number 1. Area 1, not area 0, as in PE1 and PE2. In the lab topology, we have here PE3, and PE3 interface 101 is in OSPF area 1, just area 1. So I will have to enable OSPF area 1 for Ethernet interface 101. This is the prepared script for PE3. Interface loopback 0 will be enabled with OSPF enable 1 area 1, and interface Ethernet 101 will be enabled with OSPF 1 area 1. Let's copy this script and paste it into the system view mode of PE3. Before pasting the copied script, I will double check the loopback interface IP address of PE3, loopback 0, and it has IP address 10.0.3.3. And in the system view, I paste the copied script by right click. And next router to enable OSPF for it is P1, and it has two areas, area 0 and area 1, and its loopback IP is 10.0.5.5. This is the OSPF router ID for P1, and it will have two areas, area 0 and area 1. On P1, we have one interface, Ethernet 101, should be configured in OSPF area 0, and Ethernet interface 100 should be configured in OSPF area 0, and Ethernet interface 102 should be configured in OSPF area 1. And the loopback interface will be enabled in OSPF area 0. This is the script: loopback 0 in area 0, Ethernet 100 in area 0, Ethernet 101 in area 0, and finally Ethernet 102 in area 1. I'll copy this script now and paste it into P1 router. Finally, P2 router. P2 router has only one area, which is area 0. P2 resides in area 0 with its interfaces. All of its interfaces in OSPF area 0, Ethernet 100 and Ethernet 101, plus the loopback interface of P2. This is the script. I'll copy it and paste it into system view mode of P2. Last section of this task is to check that OSPF peering is established properly by using command display OSPF peer brief, and the OSPF routes are being received by the OSPF routers using command display OSPF routing. So I'll copy the first command, display OSPF peer brief, on PE1. I can see that on PE1 that there are two peers recognized, and the two peers in area 0, the two peers are 10.0.2.2 and 10.0.5.5. 10.0.2.2 is PE2 and 10.0.5.5 is P1. Let's back to the topology, and P1 should form OSPF peering with two routers as seen in the result of the display command, P1 and PE2. We can use the same command on P1, and we expect to have three peers: peer with PE1 in OSPF area 0, and peer with P2 in OSPF area 0, and peer with PE3 in OSPF area 1. Let's run this command on P1. Display OSPF peer brief, and as expected we have three peers, in area 0, P2, and PE1, and in area 1, PE3. In P2, we can use command display OSPF routing to check on the OSPF routes that are received on P2. We have all the routes expected. This is the OSPF routing table on P2 with their types, next hop, advertising router, area ID, and cost.